Are we about to embark into a new golden age of advertising? Is sound about to be a big bass drop for the advertising industry? Will Gary V's agency, Vayner Media, disrupt both voice and the holding company model as we know it? We'll look at these topics and more, broadcasting live from Cannes Lion at the intersection of business and culture. Disruptive FM. Let's do this.
Bonjour, and welcome to a special edition of DFM. Ooh la la, la 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 la. It's Disruptive FM, live from Cannes Lions 2019, featuring interviews and insights from the International Festival of Creativity. Brought to you by Microsoft Advertising, Intelligent Connections. With your host and raconteur, Geoffrey Cologne. Voila!
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of Disruptive FM, coming to you from the French Riviera at the 66th International Festival of Creativity, also known as the Cannes Lions. We got not one, not two, but three special episodes for you this week. I'm Geoffrey Cologne, and I'll be your guide for the next, well, we normally do 15 minutes, but we're throwing out the rule book this week. In fact, however long it takes, as we look at some new developments here in Cannes, in marketing, tech, media, and popular culture. Here we go.
Here are this week's trending topics. The new creativity.
Cannes Lions has been around for 66 years. Founded when advertising on television was still new in the ripe year of 1953. And for many years, the awards were about television advertisements. But the new wave sweeping the Lions is a renewed sense of enthusiasm by a new era of folks pushing the boundaries at the intersections. Campaigns that experiment in augmented reality, search, sound, and visuals. It's a rarity to see a TV ad win a Cannes Lion anymore. But that's also because there is more than simply TV. Trust me, TV isn't dead, but it's not simply the one medium anymore. And this is good. If we want to expand the tent of what creativity means, we need to redefine what is possible. Just winning an award for creative direction on a TV spot, yeah, it's great, but it's limiting in its scope. It's also a barrier to infusing the industry with new faces who don't come from traditional TV creative director backgrounds, who may not come from the ranks of being a copywriter. And this is a good thing. We need to infuse the craft of creativity with people who don't come from traditional TV backgrounds, because that is anything but what creativity means in the almost third decade of the 21st century.
Trending topics from Cannes Lions on DFM. The sound of storytelling.
Hey you, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Ah yes, ain't that fresh? Everybody wants to get down like that. Sound is continuing to grow in influence at Cannes Lions, and I'm even going to be on a panel about the sound of storytelling at the Dan Beach House presented by Spotify, talking about this very subject. Jumping on the audio trend, news announced on Monday at Cannes is that WPP is hooking up with iHeartMedia on a new partnership aimed at luring more audio business from marketers. The venture, dubbed Project Listen, will offer creative consulting and media planning covering multiple platforms, including broadcast radio, digital streaming, podcasts, smart speakers, and live events. The two companies want to capitalize on the rising interest in audio advertising. The medium is enjoying a renaissance thanks to the surging popularity of podcasts and digital streaming. Consumers are listening to audio content for an average of 17 hours a week, according to new research from iHeartMedia. Ad spending in the U.S. on podcasts jumped 53% last year to $479 million, with podcast revenue projected to grow to $1 billion By 2021, according to a new report from the Interactive Advertising Bureau and consultancy PwC, the most interest is coming from direct-to-consumer retailers, followed by, financial services. According to the report, it notes that host-read ads remain the most popular format, accounting for nearly 2/3 of ad spend. The rising spending has created a new battlefield for audio ad and consulting dollars. The WPP iHeartMedia announcement follows a move earlier this month by Pandora to debut their project, Studio Resonate, a consulting arm that aims to help brands navigate tasks like creating a sonic logo, which is a tune or a sound that listeners associate with any given brand. Sort of like this sonic branding you're about to hear right now.
Trending topics from Cannes Lions on DFM. Voice and Vayner X.
There's a name making waves by saying they plan to be the next big thing in both voice and the agency holding company model. And it's a name that should come as no surprise. Gary Vee started Vayner Media about a decade ago as a little social media marketing agency. And now that it has grown, it contains a wing dedicated to innovation known as Vayner X. So why is this important? While many agencies have ignored voice, Vayner has embraced it. And while many agencies are happy to be purchased by a larger holding company, well, Vayner X has no plans to be bought, but to do the buying. They want to be the next big holding company to take down the likes of WPP and Dentsu. But don't take our word for it. Patrick Gibbons, Vice President of Innovation at Vayner X, he joined us earlier to talk about all these happenings and more on the terrace at the JW Marriott overlooking the Croisette in Cannes. Let's take a listen. You're a voice guy. You've been talking about it quite a bit. You're really into conversational design. Yet we don't see too many sessions on voice this year. What is it that marketers really need to understand about voice that we could at least tell them on this podcast if they're not going to hear it in any of the sessions?
I think it's an interesting time right now for us in voice where we're just cresting to that point of, device adoption. We got a little north of a quarter, I should say, of U.S. households with a device already installed. And so we're getting to that scale of usage. People are out there using it, but we're also just developing experience design principles that make sense here. Effectively, we've got, with, 18 months of track record at this point now, a bunch of first experiments in what experience design for voice can look like, starting to get second and third iterations, some learnings building up, but nowhere near that history of what our best practices even in this space is going to look like. And so as agencies try to provide the service, they're shooting blind, as are a lot of us. And I think what we're really trying to do here is relearn some of those lessons that we had to learn in other channels. It's just fundamentally different than producing an ad and broadcasting it out. We're building a product, for lack of a better word. We're building an interactive experience. It's got to be good enough for people to want to use it. I think what we're learning here are things like move towards situational design frameworks, where it's a little bit less of this traditional phone tree menu style, and instead being ready for the way people actually speak and to answer those questions a little more fluid in what we can take in and where we can go from with some next steps. We're learning about what models work and therefore then able to invest a little more in the production as well. So what does it look like when you play between the voice of the platforms and recorded audio? What does sound design look like for these channels? It's all these different tools for us as creators, as people who are wanting to design and come up with really cool experiences, that it's so much fun to play with, but we also just don't have the decades of history in them to be, I would say, as sure as we might be in some of the other media that might be a little more established, a little more of a track record there, but also at this point we're just seeing has a harder time breaking through, has a hard time reaching people.
Now, I read a really interesting article this past week in The Guardian about what's called the democratization of basically audio, where you now really can't escape it. We have a bunch of noise behind us right now. We can't escape that unless we put earlids on. And biologically, we weren't created with earlids. We were created with eyelids, but not earlids. How do we control basically what people are putting into their ears in terms of, are we going to get to a near future where near field communication, Bluetooth, and voice converge, and we have a bunch of people walking around New York City saying, move out of the way, pick this up later, and talking like robots?
I think there's a lot packed into that question, a lot of interesting pieces to it. So let's start with, if you're in an audio-first media, at least, even if it's primarily audio and you might have some visual secondary, what's the role of ads? What's the role of paid product there? Something that absolutely as an industry we're still trying to figure out, because it's not the same as written text and imagery where you can have something adjacent to the core content. You've got position one or none, really. And so are you going to interrupt the content experience? You're going to interrupt the interactive experience to throw a branded message in there? Be a pretty bad experience. We're trying to, I think, work out what is the role for some promotional model in here, but I don't think it can totally sacrifice what people are actually asking for if they're asking a question of an assistant and hoping to get an answer. You've also got, what's the quality of that experience design going to be? So again, in this model now where we don't have ad products in platform, what we're actually trying to build are experiences people are asking for rather than necessarily the mass scale content that we could push out in other channels across social elsewhere. I think what we're looking at now is this kind of confluence of, yep, it's spreading. We have, I walk around, if I'm in New York, probably spend half the day with AirPods in, and I'm going through my day, and absolutely, what does audio AR start to look like? Location-based audio where we're augmenting surroundings with that can be super useful, super interesting. It could also be really intrusive and a pretty bad experience if we aren't thoughtful about what we're building.
Yeah. We're here with Patrick Gibbons, Vice President, Head of Vayner Smart at Vayner Media on the Disruptive FM podcast, sponsored by Microsoft Advertising. Now let's pivot for a second here, Patrick. Yeah. Let's talk about another theme that is talked about almost every single year at Cannes, and that is the agency model. Now, recently, Business Insider talked about how VaynerX is going to be sort of this holding company of the future that basically Gary Vee is going to lead by changing the entire model.
Yeah, sounds right.
Talk a little bit more about this, because this is something obviously the other holding companies are probably not ready for. And every year there's always conversations on, how do we control what's going to happen here? What is this sort of model that you're building?
Sure. It's correct to say VaynerX is a holding company, right? We are a collection of different businesses that are kind of orchestrated and collected around this modern marketing agenda, whatever you would call that. And so that's Gallery Media Group, a publishing arm, the websites like PureWow, 1:37 p.m., as well as a podcast publishing arm. That's Tracer, where we're doing kind of cross-platform analytics and really trying to ensure there's accountability into where the media goes. And it's Vayner Media itself, which is actually even a bit more integrated on that agency side with the strategy and creative, but also production and media all under one roof and all really working hand in glove, working closely together. And so I think sometimes when I hear holding company, what it says to me is collection of companies that are potentially never actually speaking to one another, that are, yes, in some way affiliated on a business level, might join pitches together, but not in the iterative working relationship that I'd say is what we have today across the VaynerX network. And specifically, I'll say I work very closely with the Gallery Media Group team, though I'm a division of Vayner Media. Different companies, we sit on the same floor in the same building, walk back and forth. It's not a series of meetings scheduled to get anything accomplished. It's going over and chatting to somebody. And I think if you don't have that speed back and forth, that close, not only personal relationship, but actually physical relationship, if you're not in the same place, you're not going to get the serendipity of hearing about a new podcast that's coming up and me sitting next to the team and saying, hey, you know what? If you're going to be shooting a bunch of video and recording a bunch of audio, maybe that's also an interactive voice experience. Maybe there's a natural extension there. In terms of when we say holding company, that's what this is. And then I think even more to your point about this model of the future question, it gets pretty interesting for me because frankly what Gary's doing in this isn't reported on a quarterly basis to a holding company that we have to report earnings to. And so it allows for some longer term planning and longer term thinking. I think my division is a case study in that because no fiscally conservative holding company who was really counting on a quarterly basis would have invested 3.5 years ago in an innovations group meant to figure out if there was something to do in voice for brands, and meant to see, I don't know, what is connected packaging going to mean? When Gary and I first started talking about this, it was a feel on his side that the Internet of Things, in the broadest definition of that term, was going to matter for the way that brands were discovered, that products were bought and used, and there was something in there. There was something in all these new connected digital touch points coming around that was really going to matter for marketing. We didn't quite know what it was. We didn't know what a product was. We had to build product market fit and all the rest of this. And that's been coming up on now a 4-year project that we're continuing, but it also allowed us to be very early in the voice space and be in close partnerships with some big platforms. It allowed us to do some big connected packaging plays. We're fortunate enough to get something in market with Ritz crackers this year. It's actually up for some alliance here. And it's been really exciting to get some of these big, somewhat ambitious programs in place. And for us, it's a learning experience on how to design for these new channels. And it's also a constant assessment of, is this something, a capability that when marketing for our own brands, those that we acquire, those that we build ourselves in-house and launch, that we need to have to make sure those are successful in the future. That's really the lens through which we view where we place our emphasis.
Patrick Givens, Vice President, Head of Vayner Smart at Vayner Media. Thanks for joining us on the Disruptive FM podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're listening to a special edition of Disruptive FM, Cannes Lions 2019 with Geoffrey Cologne.
Okay, that will do it for day one, broadcasting live from Cannes Lions. Coming up on tomorrow's episode, we got some new trending topics you are going to want to really check out, including no color can. Is can too white? The industry talks a big game about diversity, but then it doesn't show up at the biggest event. Is wealth inequity the reason for this? And the advertising tax. While brands start to talk about wealth inequality, they still force the poor of the earth to watch advertising with no end in sight. Finally, stunt food with special guest Matthew Talbot is the most interesting sector of advertising in the fast food restaurant space. Don't judge me as I eat a burger and fries recording this. We all eat it from time to time, and we'll go deep on that topic. Also, if you want more bonus content, be sure to watch the videos of our interviews at youtube.com/Microsoft Advertising. We would love to connect with you. Make sure to follow us on Twitter or Instagram at DisruptiveFM. And you can connect with me personally on Twitter or Instagram at DJGeoffe. Big shout out to our sponsor for this special episode and all the special episodes this week, Microsoft Advertising. Microsoft Advertising, intelligent connections. Learn more at microsoftadvertising.ai. Until tomorrow, from everyone here at DFM, have a great day. I'm Geoffrey Cologne, and we'll catch you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Disruptive FM with Microsoft's head of brand studio, Geoffrey Cologne. All thoughts are his own. Disruptive FM was produced on location in Cannes, France by Vayner Media.